So, Mr. Reddy,
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
good morning, Mr. Reddy. How are you?
Fine. Thank you.
So, welcome to the mock interview.
Thank you.
Make yourself absolutely comfortable.
Sure.
So, after going through the detailed application form, I find that you have done your BTech in computer science engineering.
Yes.
Okay. And you are a gold medalist. You came first in the BTech and got many awards from the government of Andhra Pradesh. And you are a scholarship holder also. So, and the interesting hobby which you have mentioned is that you write answers for Quora.
Pardon me, sir. Actually, I have changed that hobby, sir, later. I deleted that part.
I see.
That
Okay.
was
So
a draft DF that I would have sent earlier.
I see, but because in that DF it was written that your hobby
Yes,
is
yes. I have remained that other two hobbies I have kept it, sir,
Acha, acha,
regarding
okay.
professional fiction and We Glory initiative.
I see. Okay. Anyway, so let me start with this that I have seen that you have got so many scholarship, isn't it? Scholarship holder. So let me ask you, so many scholarships are there. So, but do you think the kind of scholarship system that we have in this country, is it good system? Do you think that students from different strata of society, they are well covered by these scholarship schemes? And if you feel that they are not, then what suggestions would you like to make to improvise the system of scholarships?
Sir, we, presently in our nation, we are having wide range of scholarships, sir, like the scholarship for backward communities, the scholarship for students excelling in academics, scholarships for students who are showing performance in overall performance apart from academics, etc. They are incentivizing performance from all kind of students, sir. But it is also there that the kind of scholarship the amount of scholarships and the number of scholarships we are giving to disadvantaged people from disadvantaged communities and vulnerable communities is a bit less, sir. We need to increase that so that it will incentivize the people coming from such backgrounds to excel in academics and other fields.
Okay. So you have also written that you guide state civil service aspirants.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's of course a very noble thing to do. But what do you think are the three qualities which you possess, which have helped you out in doing so, in kind of a guiding or mentoring the students for state civil services? So what are those three qualities which you have? So you can give your examples, your own example.
While I was preparing, sir, I was preparing on my own. So I had to face a lot of problems, lack of guidance, lack of materials, lack of mentorship, etc. So now I am in a position where I have got good hold of all the things, the kind of preparation needed, etc. So when I am in such position, I always wanted to contribute to people, sir. Many people are in the same position that I was there earlier.
So what are the one or two qualities, which are necessary for mentoring or guiding? So a mentor should possess certain qualities. What are
the first thing is compassion, sir. We need to understand their background. We need to understand their specific issues. We need to understand that everybody is not the same and they will not be at the same level of preparation. We need to understand their own issues and guide accordingly, sir.
So compassion, or in other words, you would say empathy?
Yes, sir, empathy.
Okay, so empathy is one. What else?
After that, I think personally, sir, we need to have honesty, sir. While guiding aspirants, we should not feel that we should hold something without telling them. We should not hold any secrets.
Okay. Okay. What else?
Apart from that, the dedication for social cause, sir. Dedication for helping people. Because to manage work and these kind of initiatives, it takes a lot of pressure. So we need to have that dedicated mindset.
Okay. And probably some good communication skills also?
Definitely, sir. That is also needed.
Okay. Yeah. And last but not the least, hand holding, you see, because you have to hand hold him. That is what is necessary for
we need to create an impression that he's in a good path, and with guidance, he can certainly crack that, so that he'll get inspired and he'll put more efforts.
Okay. So what do you think are the qualities needed for a good civil servant?
Sir, in my opinion, sir, the first thing is compassion, sir. It makes a civil servant understand the problems of people and think from their perspective to give solutions.
Okay.
Apart from that, sir,
Okay.
dedication towards duty, devotion and dedication towards duty to give their best, the 100% for all the kind of duties.
Okay.
Apart from
Okay.
that, sir, honesty and integrity
Okay.
to ensure transparency and accountability in public services. After that, sir,
Okay.
leadership qualities are very much needed to take responsibility of the team, have a vision for the team, and guide them in case of issues.
Okay. Yeah, good answer. Absolutely good answer. I will only add to your knowledge to this thing. What you have said is absolutely correct. That, you know, the civil servant, besides this quality, one of the very important things which he need to possess is that he should be efficient, he should be effective, he should be productive, and he should deliver. You see, a person can be honest, but he may not be delivering. So the important thing, since we are called public servant, because we get salaries from the public exchequer. So since we are getting salary from the public exchequer, we are responsible to the public. So we need to deliver. We need to be efficient. Only honesty will not do. Honesty is not enough. Honesty is just a necessary condition, honesty and integrity, but more than that also is necessary to deliver. Okay, let me ask you one more thing. You know, we have been talking about simultaneous elections. You know, it has been going in the air. It is very much there. What are your views on that? Whether it is possible or to hold simultaneous elections, the pros and the cons?
So simultaneous elections has both pros and cons, sir. Coming to the advantages, there is no need of model code of conduct frequently. So the governance system can function effectively without any breaks. Further, the cost and the kind of deployment of central troops, etc., it will get reduced. So it has a lot of benefits, sir. Further, coming to the con sides, sir, disadvantages, when both central and state elections are conducted at the same time, then there is a chance that national level issues and state level issues get mixed, sir. We have seen in so many electoral verdicts that people are voting differently for central government and state government, sir. There is a chance that the central issues might dominate state level issues if both elections happen at the same time. Further, constitutionally also, sir, it will be not possible to hold simultaneous elections unless we create a situation where president rule is imposed when state governments are come down due to non-confidence motion, etc.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, now, you know, there has been a good growth of education in this country. I mean, year after another year, and different 5-year plans have been giving emphasis on the education, though not to that extent as Amartya Sen would have liked it to be. But, you know, despite growth of education, a large number of Indians, we Indians, have still not come out of our caste religion syndrome. So that thing still continues, and this, you know, is amply reflected in the elections. So this caste religion syndrome is not, we are able to come out in spite of education. So are we really educating or simply making our people literate?
So firstly, we are making our people literate, sir. After that, many of the people we are educating them also. But the issue is that, sir, there is lack of value education, quality value education. We are unable to impose this sense of rational thinking into people's mind. Further, the societal aspects. So they are dominating people's minds, sir.
Okay, all right. So that, what measures would you take in order that to, you know, gradually come out of this syndrome in this country? What do you think as a civil servant you can do?
Sir, for most of the social problems, sir, the first change should start from the home itself, sir. So we need to start educating our children about these issues, the kind of situations prevailing in the society, and educate them about the kind of differences, the rational analysis of the differences. Further, we also need to make sure that the vulnerable and backward communities, sir, they are empowered so that they can assert their own rights.
Okay. All right. So last question. So from time to time, you know, government increases the penalty for violation of various traffic rules. In some cases, it has been made many times, you know.
Yes.
So this increase in the penalty goes on. And sometimes, as I said, that even 10 times it has been increased. So don't you think it actually leads to more corruption? And do you support the idea of increasing the penalty, or do you think some other measure is required to control the traffic violation which take place so easily in this country?
Sir, earlier the penalties were very less, sir, to the tune of 100 rupees and 500 rupees. So it was not very significant considering the increase of per capita and economic income in the country. So recently they have increased it to around 10,000 rupees, etc. It is a good step, sir. Coming to the kind of corruption, sir, several steps are taken like body-worn cameras to police and also online challans, etc. So that this corruption reduces, sir. Further, apart from that, sir, we need to focus on road management system so that U-turns, etc., will be designed based on the needs, sir, on rational analysis of the traffic need, etc. So that people doesn't have to violate these rules because of necessity.
Thank you. Mr. Dagar.
Hello, Mr. Reddy.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. What is model code of conduct?
Sir, model code of conduct is an agreement between political parties so that the elections will be conducted in a peaceful and conductive manner without any undue influence from parties in power.
Are you sure it is agreement?
Pardon me, sir. I am unable to understand the question, sir.
What is the model code of conduct for the political parties during election? You mentioned that this is an agreement amongst the political parties. Is it true?
Sir, Election Commission of India, it has designed this model code of conduct after consultations with all the political parties, sir. So in that sense, I have said it as an agreement between all those.
You mentioned earlier that if there is simultaneous election, if we go for simultaneous election, this will not be required. Why?
Yes.
Why this will not be required?
Sir, it will be required, sir. But due to multiple elections at center and state level.
The last question, your question, you mentioned that one of the advantage will be that model code of conduct may not be required.
Pardon me, sir. Model code of conduct will be required, but the time period under model code of conduct, sir, it will reduce, sir, because all the elections will be conducted at the same time. Presently, for every election, we need to impose this model code of conduct, which imposes a restriction on new government schemes, etc.
You see, you used 3 words in the last question when they were asked. One was the weaker sections, then the disadvantaged sections. Then you used one more word, backward communities.
Yes.
What is the difference in all this, and how you will call the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes? What is the correct phrase to use? What is the correct word to use for them separately?
Sir, in my opinion, disadvantaged communities would be a better word, sir, because of their historical disadvantages, which made the socio-economic situation a bit backward for them compared to the rest of the people.
So tell me, what is Atrocities Act? Have you heard about Atrocities Act?
Yes, sir.
What is this?
It is an act to prevent atrocities on SC and ST people, sir.
Yeah. What
To
are
protect them from the subjugation of.
What are the basic provisions of the law?
Sir, if any person not belonging to SC/ST communities tries to intimidate or tries to create violent situation on people from SC/ST community, then they can file a case, sir. And in these cases, the police need to compulsorily register an FIR, and there is no provision of anticipatory bail also.
So what is the definition of that crime you mentioned? What will be the definition? Yeah.
It's a definition of tribes.
Which action on the part of other than SC/ST person will form a crime under the Atrocities Act?
Sir, there are a list of
Which are the offenses?
Sir, there are a list of offenses, sir.
Yeah,
Like preventing them from using public spaces, parading them with chappals, parading them naked, abusing them with their caste names.
There are many cases when they work in the office, you see their official capacity in government offices or say public sector of undertakings. At that time also, there are many offenses which are registered under this act. What is the reason for that?
Sir, one reason is that, sir, in some cases, the issue is really happening, sir, because some people from other communities, they feel that because of reservations, people from SC/ST community are getting undue advantage. And because of that, they have this grudge at the back of their mind, because of which they discriminate the people from SC/ST communities, sir. That is one reason, sir. And there is one more reason, sir. In few cases, this provision is misused, sir.
What is your opinion? Is it still continuing the discrimination, or it is just an extension of actually whatever was there in the constitution at that time? Is it?
Sir, with the present socio-economic development situation and present development in general societal perspective, sir, the discrimination has very much reduced, sir. But in many parts of India and in many spheres, the discrimination is still continuing, sir.
But tell me, how a government helps these communities? What is the tool?
So the government has provided.
How we support them? How we improve their economic standards? How we improve their living standards? What is the mechanism?
So the government provides constitutional safeguards for them, sir. It ensures a certain percentage of jobs and certain percentage of seats in educational institutes are reserved for people from SC/ST communities. So
that is for a very small portion of the population.
Yes, sir. A small portion of the population are utilizing those provisions presently, sir. Apart from that, sir, we have several welfare schemes, sir, that focuses on building separate schools, hostels for people from backward communities, merit scholarships, etc.
Separate schools. You mean, we have separate schools for SC, separate for ST, OBC?
Sir, it is not entirely separate, sir. In that, the majority of people will be from SC/ST communities, sir. For example, ashram schools, etc. In that, around 75% of people are from SC/ST communities.
Is it a good thing to have separate schools for separate communities? Or we should have a school in those areas where there are more scheduled caste and scheduled tribes population? There are two things actually. One is actually we should have more and more school and hospitals in that area. And the second is actually we have for them. So 80% from their population, 20% from others.
Sir, it is important that we increase the amount of infrastructure we have, sir, in both education and health sector. Apart from that, we also need schemes through which we can push people from SC/ST communities to utilize those resources, sir. So having a particular percentage of seats reserved for them will make sure that those seats will not be taken by the communities who are already forward in socio-economic frameworks. So certain percentage of reservation is needed, okay, so that other people won't dominate them.
Thank you.
Gauri Shankarji.
Mr. Reddy.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Now you are, doing your computer science BTech. So tell me, how is internet regulated? Have you heard of a thing called ICANN? What it is and how the system is regulated?
Sir, ICANN is a system that streamlines the IP addresses, sir.
What does it mean, first of all? What does it stand for?
Sorry, sir, I am unable to remember the exact names.
Okay, so tell me the rest.
Sir, it regulates the IP addresses, the distribution of IP addresses to various internet service providers. Further, internet service providers allocate IP addresses to multiple nodes connected to them, sir, like mobiles, laptops, broadband connections, etc.
Like .com or IN or IR, these, nomenclatures which come into the internet system, who allocates them?
Sir, I'm not entirely sure of the specific procedures, sir.
Yeah, this is a company called Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers.
Okay.
Now that is called ICANN.
Yes.
Okay, these are assigned by that, and then you go by those, what you call addresses, IP addresses.
Yes.
Secondly, how does the internet actually function? Where billions of people are connected, interconnected, how does it work? Can you explain by a small example?
So internet is basically a network of various interconnected systems, sir. For example, when we are searching for any kind of information, first we will search with the name of that website, sir. For example, we search for UPSC. At the background, there will be a server, sir, called DNS server. It converts that URL into specific IP address, sir. That IP address will locate to the server that is sitting at the UPSC, sir. Then our information request will go and speak with the server sitting at UPSC, sir, using various protocols like TCP/IP protocols, sir. From there, after establishing the connection, data transfer happens.
Okay, so everybody is a user and a contributor in the internet. For example, I have my website. That website is used by others, so I'm a contributor. And I'm accessing somebody else's website, so I'm a user. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the internet is a system in which billions of the people are contributing data, and the same people are using the data. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now tell me, Sardar Patel is known for consolidating India soon after India's independence, and the country as it stands today, a tribute is paid to him. What did he do actually? What was the problem?
Sir, at the time of independence, sir, we had around more than 500 princely states. So his job was to integrate all the princely states whose geographical location is falling within Indian territory into India after British have left the nation. So he has used various methods, for example, persuasion, giving some kind of incentives for them, like privy purse, allowing them to have their own flags, ceremonial flag salutes in various occasions. And further, he has asked the princely states to accede in power to India in few areas, like foreign relations, communication, etc. So gradually, they have entirely consolidated with the rest of the India.
So there were 526 states that were consolidated into Indian Union. What were the problematic states? Can you tell me 3-4 names which were really problematic?
Sir, one state was Nizam, sir, Hyderabad state.
Mm-hmm.
After that, a few other states were Junagadh, Kashmir.
Okay, what was the problem there?
That needed more efforts than. Sir, in Hyderabad, the Nizam belongs to the Muslim community. He was trying to have independence from both India and Pakistan. So he was not ready to accede to India, sir. So a military operation had to be taken.
Okay, and then what happened in Kashmir?
Sir, in Kashmir, the king was from Hindu community, sir. But a majority of the people were from Muslim community. And as it is nearer to both Pakistan and Indian territory, both the countries were pressurizing it to accede to themselves. And the king has maintained a kind of independence without giving his verdict to join any of these nations. So from Pakistan, a few tribals have invaded the nation. A few people have invaded the Kashmir. So he has come to India for rescuing from those invasions. India has asked to sign instrument of accession, sir. By that instrument of accession, he has acceded Kashmir to India. And later it was agreed that a plebiscite will be held later to decide upon this accession to India.
Who agreed about plebiscite? Where? What kind of plebiscite?
Sir, as far as I can remember, sir, the plebiscite was agreed in United Nations, sir.
Okay.
Sir, to get the opinion of the people in Kashmir region regarding their own wishes to join either Pakistan or India.
Okay. And then what happened finally?
Sir, a precondition for this plebiscite event, sir, was that both India and Pakistan security forces need to go back to their earlier positions, but that hasn't happened yet, sir. So the plebiscite is still pending.
Is it valid anymore? Is Kashmir issue still pending in UN?
Yes, sir, it is still pending in UN, sir.
Are you sure about that?
As far as I can remember, it is still pending, sir. Because of Shimla Agreement, both the nations have concluded that without any external intervention, they will resolve all the issues bilaterally.
No, the UN has already is not involved anymore in the Kashmir dispute.
Okay, thank you.
The resolution, so-called resolution, has already been, done away with.
Okay.
Okay, now you must have heard a term called PPP.
Yes, sir.
So what is India's GDP on PPP basis?
Pardon me, sir, I am unaware of the exact numbers. It is third
Okay.
biggest economy based on PPP.
Yeah, but what is PPP and how it is calculated?
Sir, PPP takes into consideration the price situation in various nations, sir.
It's called purchasing power parity
Parity,
concept.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If, for example, one hotel room is available for 100 rupees in India, and the similar hotel room in US is available for $100, so it means 100 rupees and $100 are equal in terms of the purchasing power parity.
Okay.
Okay. So what is the India GDP in terms of PPP?
Sorry, sir, I'm unaware of that. I need to.
Okay, it's approximately 2.95 trillion US dollars.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now you must have heard the name called Bretton Woods institutions.
Yes.
What is the Bretton Woods institutions?
Sir, as far as I can remember, sir, both World Bank and International Monetary Fund, they are called as Bretton Woods institutions, sir.
What is this? What are these institutions? Are there any more?
I'm unable to remember at this point, sir.
And when were these institutions set up?
I'm unaware of the exact years. Sorry.
Okay, okay. So these institutions were set up after the Second World War.
Okay.
To revive the global economy. And there are four institutions, that is World Bank, which is called International Bank for Development and Reconstruction,
yes.
International Monetary Fund, IDA, and there's one more. Okay. So these are the institutions. Now coming back to India, tell me, which are the languages in India which have their origin in Sanskrit, and which are the languages which don't have their origin in Sanskrit?
Sir, languages not having their origin in Sanskrit, sir, are mostly Dravidian languages like Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu. And
are you sure about all that? All these are Dravidian languages, all which you mentioned just now?
Yes, sir. I remember that I have read these languages have originated earlier than Sanskrit. So
Okay,
they were not from Sanskrit origin, I assume, sir, from that.
okay. Going back to your state, you just mentioned about reservation policy. Now there is a viewpoint that instead of giving reservation, we should provide them good scholarship, good monetary assistance to prepare them very well for the examination so that they can compete with the rest of the students who are coming from higher class of the society. What is your view? Is reservation needed, or is financial assistance to bring them up is good enough?
Sir, both focus on both these measures is really very important, sir, because only financial assistance and skill development initiatives, they will not ensure sufficient outcomes, sir. They will not ensure that the people from disadvantaged communities, they will be represented well. So reservation is kind of assisting measures, sir, along with all the other measures to ensure their participation.
So you feel the reservation should be there along with financial assistance?
Sir, in the short term, yes, sir. In the long term, when the people who are availing this reservation, they come to the same level of socio-economic development of other people, then we can gradually reduce these reservations, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Harish ji.
Yashwant Kumar,
Yes, sir. Good morning.
good afternoon. Now, is this your name, Yashwant?
Yes, sir.
What does it mean?
So the person who has attained yash, success or glory.
Success. So you are about to do that in a couple of months. So be prepared. You've done very well so far. Now tell me about your job. You have done 2 jobs.
Yes, sir.
Tell me something about it. What was actually your role?
Yes. Sir, after graduation, I have joined Indian Oil Corporation Limited and worked there for 2 years, sir, as information systems officer. I was posted in a data recovery center and I worked as system admin, sir, for the ERP application that was being used in the IOCL. After that, I wrote group 1 examination and presently working as Assistant Commissioner of State Taxes, sir. My presently I had
state government.
Yes, the state government.
Okay.
Presently, I am the administrative head of a circle level office in GST. We have around 4,000 taxpayers in our jurisdiction. Our responsibility is to ensure that all of them file returns and scrutiny the returns. And in case of any discrepancies, giving notices and collecting demands. Further, we do enforcement activities also, sir, like inspection, etc.
Okay. Okay, good. Now, educate me something about 5G. I hear all this 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. What are these Gs?
So G basically means generation, sir. It means an advancement from the previous generation. 5G is an advancement from the previous generation of 4G communication network in terms of lower latency, higher communication, higher density of connections.
But what I will get, I'll be able to do that I'm not able to do now with 4G. With 5G, what other capabilities I will gain?
Sir, mostly the efficiency of the present processes, sir, they will be increased. For example, for downloading any movie, if it is taking 5 minutes now, in 5G it will take just 5 to 10 seconds, sir. The kind of speed and bandwidth, it will increase, sir. And further, the IoT setup, sir, we are unable to utilize it to the fullest potential now because of these data issues. In 5G, we will be able to utilize IoT more effectively, sir. Internet of Things.
What is it, IoT?
Internet of Things.
Internet of Things. Okay. Now tell me what kind of physical infrastructure will have to be changed to get into the 5G mode?
So firstly, we need to have a optical overhaul network, sir. The basic cables that connect two towers, those need to be upgraded. In India, mostly we are not using optical fiber networks. Those need to be upgraded. Apart from that, the communication networks, the communication equipment, they need to be upgraded, sir, in my knowledge.
So is it worth it? I mean, you have to upgrade, you have to change everything, your end instrument as well as your fiber network.
Yes, sir. In this digital age, speed has become the biggest thing, sir. The speed with which we can access resources, the speed with which we can communicate is very much important. So it will be definitely worth it, sir.
But has our penetration into the rural area sufficient enough that that is the priority, or upgrading it to higher technology platform is the priority?
So we should try to balance both of the priorities, sir. Advancement in 5G and also ensuring penetration of communication network into all areas, sir. Presently, we have various schemes of government, sir.
Okay, now you are discussing with sir about GDP, and there are three terms. One is GDP, other is a GDP as per PPP, as sir explained. Huh? There is also a third, it's called nominal GDP.
Okay.
So what is that? So what is the difference between GDP and nominal GDP?
Sir, as far as I can remember, sir, nominal GDP is the GDP at present prices, sir. It doesn't factor inflation, sir. Real GDP factors this inflation, sir.
Okay, so which value will be higher out of these three for India?
Sir, generally, we are having a positive inflation in India, sir, around 4 to 5%. Then real GDP will be more, sir. Sir. Nominal GDP will be more, sir.
Okay, and how will that compare to PPP? You know, which country has a PPP value 1?
Sir, United States, sir, because
okay, because it's compared with US dollars. Now, what are the other competing currencies to dollars? Dollar is a predominant international currency, but what are the other currencies which can give a tough competition to USD?
So Chinese yuan.
Sorry?
Chinese currency, sir, yuan, I think.
No, what are the other currencies which can challenge the dominance of USD?
So the capacity to challenge depends on the acceptance of those currencies, sir. The stability of that currency. These two issues should be taken care of, sir. In the present situation, Chinese economy is growing very much, and the kind of trade balances it has with other countries are also ensuring it has stable price.
So will the Chinese currency a good competition, or euro will be a good competition? Or maybe down the line, Indian rupee will be?
So presently, both euro, pound of UK and Chinese currency is good competition, sir. And hopefully in future, Indian currency also will pose a tough competition to all this.
Is the Indian rupee a fully convertible currency, or it's still not there?
Sir, it is, as far as I can remember, it's partially convertible, sir.
Okay, so why we have been talking about it for last 15 years, 20 years, why we have not made it fully convertible? What are the dangers?
Sir, if we make Indian currency fully convertible, then our capital inflows and outflows, sir, they'll become more volatile. So it might influence our economic situation, sir, because our economic condition now, it's not very robust.
Okay. Final question. How do we assess the impact of a black market in the economy? You know black market?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how do we assess that? For example, how much of black money is in the circulation? Not actually circulation, but is that part of the economy? How do we get that? And also there is an unorganized sector. So how do we incorporate this, all the three components, so that our GDP calculation is fair enough?
So regarding unorganized sector, sir, As far as I can remember, while doing estimates, the government takes kind of nominal numbers in place of unorganized sectors, sir.
Nominal?
Nominal numbers. I mean, to cover all the unorganized sectors, sir.
So is there some guesstimate?
Yes, sir. Estimate of all the economic situation.
Is it estimate or a guesstimate?
Pardon me, sir.
Is that a guesswork, or there is some foundation, some solid base for calculating that?
So definitely there must be some kind of solid base, sir. I am unaware of the exact technicalities, sir, but there was some solid base.
And how do we assess the impact of black market, black money in our economy?
Sir, one example I can think of is the kind of real estate prices, sir. The prices of registration, the face value that they show in registration document is very low when compared to the real transaction price, sir. So that would give us an estimate of the kind of black money and black economy.
And what is your assessment now? How much, what portion of our activity is through black money?
Sir, I am unaware of the exact technicalities, sir. I cannot comment on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vipulji.
Okay, Yashwant.
Good morning.
So, good afternoon. So, you were talking with the Gauri Shankar sir regarding the ICANN and the IP addresses. So, can you tell me something about TCP/IP model of the network?
Sir, it is a communication protocol, sir. I am unaware of the exact. I need to look into that, sir. I need to revise that.
Okay, fine enough. Okay, so can you tell me what actually IP address is? I mean, why do we need IP address?
Sir, IP address is a kind of unique identifier for all the resources that are connected to the internet, sir. So every internet request is directed towards a specific resource, sir. Be it any database, be it any system, be it any server, etc. So to identify that uniquely, so that our request for information is directed to that specific server, and the result of that information request, the answer, is directed to our server or our device. So to identify all the devices connected to this internet platform uniquely, this IP address is needed.
And what is MAC address?
Sir, MAC address is a physical address for all the devices that are connected to the internet, sir. It cannot be changed.
Okay, fine, good. So recently IPv4 has been changed to IPv6. So why
Yes.
there has been such a sudden shift or a big shift from V4 to V6? Why there was need for this shift?
Sir, the number of unique devices that can be connected using IPv4, sir, it is 256 to the power 4, sir. With the present digital evolution and the kind of digital means we are using, more and more devices are getting connected to the internet, sir. So there is a need of creating more number of identifiers. IPv6 provides a facility of 256 to the power of 6 unique identifiers, sir. So this present shift is necessary.
Okay, good. So you have worked in the field of big data. Can you tell me what is big data and how this big data can be utilized in current corona crisis?
Sir, big data is a kind of data characterized by huge amount of volume, huge variety, huge veracity, and huge variability in its usage value. And it cannot be processed using traditional database management systems, sir. In this present corona period, sir, we can use it in both testing and tracing, sir. And further, we can.
Can you elaborate? Can you design some system which can use big data?
Yes, sir. Sir, now we are getting so much of foreign aid, sir. So now the government is distributing that foreign aid to various institutes present all over the nation. So to make a rational framework for the kind of distribution, sir, we can create a model using big data that assess the present capabilities, present infrastructure, and the kind of stress they are having, and the future needs, and the present resources available. Based on big data, we can create a model so that the foreign aid we are getting, it can be distributed equitably, sir, based on the need.
Okay, something about patients and the oxygen cylinder, something can be
done. Yes, sir, definitely all the resources, sir, whatever the resources are there, using big data, we can ensure they are being effectively deployed in the areas where they are needed the most.
Okay, okay, fine. So you have worked in Indian Oil Corporation, I can see, as an information officer. So can you tell me what are the strategic oil reserves?
So there is one, okay, strategic oil reserves are a kind of buffer oil reserves we have in case of emergency situations, like war, increase in prices, etc. They, so that our domestic needs will be taken care of for few days.
Okay. Do India have any such oil resources?
Yes, sir. It has many strategic oil reserves, sir, in Padur, in Visakhapatnam.
Okay, fine. So it is generally said that I'll connect data with the oil. It is generally said that data is new oil. So
Yes.
what is meant by this statement? Can you elaborate?
Yes. In the present generation, sir, in the digital evolution generation, the value that data carries, sir, it is very immense. Based on the analysis of data, based on that, it has various use cases, sir, like increasing customer penetration, ensuring efficient governance, etc. The present data, it will give a glimpse of everything that is happening all over the world, sir, using which we can streamline many of the processes.
Okay. So since data is so much important now and everybody knows that data is so important, can you tell me what 3 steps government should take to ensure that there is data localization in India?
So to push for data localization, sir, firstly, we need to have a efficient infrastructure, sir, data storage and data processing infrastructure, like data centers, etc., so that the cost of storage of data at India is competitive to the prices of storage in cloud and other places. Further, we also need to focus on data privacy, sir. Data privacy, so that users' data will not be used without their consent. Further, while storage also, sir, we need to use this data encryption techniques, sir, because data leakages are very big menace now, very big cyber security issue now. So data security is also very important. These 3 things we need to take care of.
Okay, okay, fine. So one more important question. Recently, elections were in news, and in elections we use the EVMs. There has been time and again questions about the safety and security of the EVMs also. So can you tell me the structure of EVM and how it is secure, or if it is not, then how it can be made secure?
So the processor that we are using in RAM, sir, it is only one time writable. After we push the code into the processor, we cannot change the code, sir. And further, the manufacturing of these processors, sir, it is taken care by ECIL, sir, as far as I know. It is taken care by only one institute, sir.
Okay.
And further, sir, there is no external connectivity to this machine, sir. They are standalone machines. There is no Wi-Fi connectivity, etc., using which other devices can connect to this standalone device, sir.
Okay, okay, fine enough. I'll just ask just one final question. It's quite a bit practical question. There is huge shortage of oxygen concentrators in between. You are an engineer. Can you think of a way to design an in-house oxygen concentrator at home?
So oxygen concentrator basically increases the composition of oxygen that is present in the air, sir, by filtering out other components of air like nitrogen, etc. I am unaware of the technicalities,
yes, go ahead,
so
yes.
I will not be able to design a scheme.
Just think, just apply some logic. You may come up with the idea. Just think of it. Okay, okay, fine. Okay, go ahead, give the idea, please.
Sir, based on the difference of properties between nitrogen and oxygen, sir, we need to devise some scheme so that these gases will be separated, sir. I don't know the exact chemical properties and physical properties, sir, so I am unable to comment further.
Fine enough. I think it is concluded from my side, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. So we'll take you out of the picture for the time being.
Sure.
So kindly take him.
Shall I leave now, sir?
Yashwant, we will now put you back into the waiting room. Kindly please wait there.
Sure.
The panel will discuss and then call you back for the feedback.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
First of all, my apologies to everyone. I was under the impression that we had a lunch break, and so I was not there for a few minutes.
Okay, so Nagarji.
Good candidate. Good candidate. I don't have actually much to say, but only thing is that he should focus more on the constitutional provisions, how the policies frame, how actually a particular act is passed in a legislature, and what are the constitutional provisions for the weaker sections. Like you see the 73rd constitutional amendment, he should have highlighted. I mean, how actually the welfare schemes, state level, central level, what is the, you see, allocation, which ministries actually take care of them, and why they have actually not come up. I mean, in spite of actually 70 years of independence, he should focus on that. He may be asked because, I mean, he belongs to Andhra. So this question might actually come up.
Okay.
We should focus on that.
Okay, thank you. Gauri Shankar ji. Ji, Gauri Shankar ji.
You are muted, sir.
Sir, mute pe hain.
Yeah, I muted because there's background sound. Sorry for that.
हाँ जी,
So, yeah, out of the 3 candidates today, the first one I would put at 8 out of 10. The second one at 7, and I'll put him at 6.
Okay.
So I would call him a very good candidate, but he needs little bit improvement in his knowledge. His presentation is good. His confidence level is good. I think his English is sometimes not very effective. The choice of word is missing sometimes.
Okay.
Once or twice I found him, trying to struggling for a word.
Okay, take it. Thank you. Ji, Harish ji.
Yes, I think he is a good candidate, but he is a technical person, and in technical subject he is very good. But in other things, in governance, economy, etc., I think he has to do some work to build a overall these things. But he is promising. He has to find out the gaps and the weak part, and then try to make up on this.
Okay, thank you. Vipul ji.
I think, sir, he is good in some fragments. He is sometimes showing some good brilliance, and then he is going off the record. But overall, if he can work very hard, then he can come up because he has a good personality. अब थोड़ी सी स्माइल अगर ऐड करते तो he would be much better. बाकी तो he answered technical questions okay. In 70-80% questions were fine, so I think he is okay in that sense.
Okay, thank you. Pratyush, we can bring Mr. Reddy back. Yes, Mr. Reddy.
Yes, sir.
You are in. Okay. So welcome back again. So let me ask you, what exactly do you think you have performed? Your own view and assessment. How would you look upon your performance during the last about 35 minutes? And which are the areas where you feel that probably there is a need to improve upon, and which are your strength areas?
So for a few questions, I think the answers were good, sir. But there are areas of improvement, like the questions asked by Dagur, sir, regarding backward communities, etc. I was unable to put my views correctly.
Okay.
I think that I need.
Okay. So yeah. So let me just add a few inputs from the side of the panel, and they are just by way of suggestions, because ultimate aim of all of us is that you should succeed. So you have to take it in that stride only.
Yes.
It is just by way of suggestion to improve your performance, so that ultimately the end result is that you come selected in that, for which you have made such long efforts. So overall, we feel that you are very good and you have got a sound knowledge, particularly on the technical side. Yes, more or less, you have got a very good knowledge. And the only areas probably you need to work upon, as you very rightly yourself said, that there are certain things regarding the constitutional provisions which exist, for the help of the disadvantaged sector, the sectors which need to be brought up in the society. So what is the constitutional framework available in terms of the articles of the Constitution and special acts which have been promulgated for them, and what exactly is being done by different states, how far we have come in that direction. So that is an area where you should work even harder. You have got a good knowledge, but there is still, you can do that. So the weaker section of the society, disadvantaged section, that is one area. And some of the important constitutional landmark public reforms which have come in this country. For example, the empowerment of the panchayats or the empowerment of the urban local bodies in the form of 73rd and 74th Amendment. That also is an important area. And similarly, there have been many landmark judgments. So it will be a good idea to brush through them once again, just to understand that this is what the governments, one after another, have been doing for the disadvantaged sector. And that includes the reservation, of course, no doubt about it, in terms of scholarship, in terms of many things. But the backing has to come originally from the Constitution and the special acts which have been promulgated. And then besides that, you do possess the knowledge, you have a good presentation skill. And I think, except that sometimes you are some of the words, probably you are not able to find appropriate choice of words at well. So it's okay. It happens many a time. And that for that, I always suggest to the candidate, even when I make a presentation, even now, it's a good idea always to, the best speakers in this world. And before making presentation, they always rehearse it. And standing before a mirror or asking one of your fellow colleagues to observe you, how you are speaking, what is your body language, how your eye contact is there, how your head is tilted on one side. So the entire thing you must be able to do that. So it's a good idea to keep on improving your presentation skills. Sure. So that will give you more confidence also. And the choice of words will automatically come naturally to you. You will not have to grope for choice of words at that point of time. So that's a good thing. You have a good confidence, you have good skills, and technically also you are sound, and you have a very pleasing personality also. So that also is absolutely fine. I think overall it's okay, and we think that you can do, but you can do better. You see, you can definitely do better. And now since you still have ample time at your disposal to work in that direction, so we feel that you will definitely be able to make it to the civil services, but just don't let overconfidence sometimes overshadow you. And even though you may be sound in certain areas, but there may be still, the other side, one should be able to see the other side sometimes also, because, just like you will be sitting on one side of the table, there will be people sitting on the other side. So for every issue, there is always two sides of the coin. So you must appreciate that. And you should normally do not have extreme view. You have not taken, but I'm just trying by way of counsel that there are certain areas in which you will need to have a very balanced view. So with that remarks, I would say that yes, you have done well, and you can perform definitely and come out successfully. So from my side, it is okay. Anything you would like to ask us?
Nothing as such, sir.
Okay. So all the best.
Thank you.
Okay, so wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the best.
All the best. All the best.
Thank you.